Hey everyone, the World Championships are obviously this weekend, so I thought it would be a fun idea to go ahead and give my final predictions going into the event. I'm uploading this the day before day one, so obviously the event hasn't started yet if you're watching this and it's Thursday, but I thought it'd be fun to just go ahead and kind of give my thoughts on where I think some of these decks are going to finish. Obviously only one deck can win the entire tournament, so in this top tier there's going to be one deck there that I think is going to win the whole thing. But I do think that it's very interesting right now. We have a lot of very good decks in the format. Obviously Dragapult is the best deck out there. It can just go into the field and pretty much deal with anything, but there are a lot of other strong decks where I think if the right person is piloting it and they hit the right matchups throughout the event, then they can definitely have a deep run. So I do think that there are a lot of decks going into Worlds that are going to do pretty well for the most part. I don't, spoiler alert, I don't think that Dragapult will win the World Championships. I do think it's going to do well, but we will get into that. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. I'll give you guys my predictions. You guys can let me know what you think is going to win the whole tournament in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure you subscribe too. But let's go ahead and get into it. So we've got 5 categories here. The top one is obviously the winner. So there's going to be one deck in that category. Right below that, we have Top Cut, Top 32, Day 2. And in the bottom tier is the decks that I think somebody will probably bring to the events. I don't think that they're even going to make day 2 though, right? So we're going to start from the bottom and kind of work our way up here. I kind of have just the most relevant decks here, I would say. You can go on here and like filter and, you can add Okidogi Barbarical, but I don't think anyone's bringing that, With an event like this, especially with how Worlds is structured now, where it's a lot harder to qualify, I do think that a lot more people that do qualify just take it more seriously in general. So I don't really expect a whole lot of like meme decks or, very unpopular decks to show up and do well. So some decks that are kind of relevant in the format might not be on here, but feel free to call me out, I guess. I don't know. Let's go ahead and jump into it though. So in the bottom tier, we have someone will bring it. This will be decks that will be in day 1 of Worlds that I don't think will make day 2. Very interesting because honestly, not that much changed as far as cards that we got since NAIC. All we got was the Pitch Black cards, but there are a lot of decks that were pretty relevant at NAIC that I think are pretty irrelevant going into this event. One of those, honestly, this might be kind of a hot take, but I don't think Rocket's Honchkrow is really going to show up at Worlds. I do think it's still a strong deck, don't get me wrong. I just feel like there's a lot of other decks that do similar things to Rocket's Honchkrow where I feel like you're at Worlds and you're trying to actually do well, I think you're picking a different deck. I don't think that Rocket's Honchkrow offers you a whole lot that other decks don't offer you. There's a lot of other aggro decks out there, Mega Excadrill now. Festival League got a lot better as a single prize deck, so I think there are a lot of better choices outside of Rocket's Honchkrow, so I don't really expect it to do that well. Speaking of single prizers, I don't think that the Hide and Sneak deck is going to show up at all for Worlds. Got a lot of hype going into Pitch Black out of Japan, obviously did pretty well at the championships over there, but I don't really think that people are really taking this deck super seriously. This might be a hot take, right? Like, somebody very well could make day 2, someone could very well go on a deep run, right? And honestly, it's a deck that does decently well against Dragapult. I just don't think that it really answers Dragapult in the way that people thought that it would. There's other decks that do the job better, I feel like, and I don't really think that people want to dedicate their Worlds run to this deck specifically. I'd be very shocked to see this thing make it into top 32, right? If a couple sneak into day 2, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me. I just don't think that the meta share is going to be high on this deck, and I don't think that people will do very well with it if they do decide to bring it, honestly. Outside of that, that's kind of all I really have in this bottom category. We're going to talk about Bronzong. Yeah, from here on, I think everything else on here makes day 2, honestly. Bronzong is an interesting one. Kind of popped up out of nowhere, it feels like. Kind of a meme deck in a way, right? But I do think that Bronzong is a deck that encounter things like Dragapult better than a deck like Hide and Sneak. Honestly, I think that some people might just kind of go into it and say, hey, I'm gonna play this deck that counters Dragapult pretty effectively, counters a lot of other decks as well pretty effectively, and I'm gonna see how it goes, right? So I think that a deck like Bronzong honestly would play better than a deck like Hide and Sneak. That's just my opinion. I do think there is some value behind this deck. It is a little bit of a meme deck, right? But it honestly is pretty effective if your opponent is not prepared for it, or if you just kind of get going early on. You know, you get to go first. A lot of Dragon Balls are picking second right now in the format, so I do think that there's the potential there for this deck. We're gonna throw a lot of other decks in this category as well. We're gonna throw in. Let's throw in Meganium Arboliva Ogrepon, a deck that recently won the online Tournament of Doom Worlds event with like 900 players, something like that. Very strong deck, honestly. I just feel like most people, if you're playing a Teal Mask deck, you're gonna stick with Hydrapple for the most part. I just think that Arboliva, it's good early game, obviously, but I do think it loses a lot of value as the game kind of progresses. So I don't really think it's going to go much further than day 2, but I do think it's going to have a solid finish overall. Other decks in this category here, I see maybe like a Rockets Mewtwo. This is another one that, again, probably going to have a very low meta share, but I think the thought process here is it's pretty decent into Dragapult. Again, with an event like this where most people are playing Dragapult, there are going to be people that kind of just say, you know what, I'm going to play a deck that beats Dragapult. If I hit my bad matchups, I hit my bad matchups and I lose, you know, whatever. But for the most part, I'm planning to beat Dragapult. And a deck like this can kind of deal with stuff like that. It can deal with things like Alakazam. It can deal with things like Zoroark. So even though it does struggle against stuff like Excadrill, I do think that some people will still decide to play this deck and do pretty well with it. Other decks in this category here, we've got Cynthia's Garchomp. I just think it's just too volatile with the grass stuff, honestly. I do think that somebody will play it, or a few people will play it, honestly, and it's pretty good into Dragapult for the most part, but I just think that there's too much stuff in the field right now that counters it for it to really have like a deep run, I would say. We're gonna have Grimmsnarl here as well. Another deck that, you know, top players like to play this, I feel like, for the most part, but again, it's Worlds. Do you really want to dedicate your whole run to the Grimmsnarl? I'm sure some people will. All the Grimmsnarl fans out there are crazy about this deck, and it's honestly a solid deck overall. It does have its weaknesses and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's still a solid deck, so would not surprise me to see it make day 2. Mega Lucario, another one, same thing. Very strong deck. A lot of people are kind of saying it's underrated going into Worlds, and that it kind of is Excadrill but better, you know, in a way. The downside with Lucario, though, obviously, is that it does have some rougher matchups, I would say. Clefairy is just really hard to deal with, especially if you hit those like Clefairy box decks. Hide and Sneak if you happen to hit one, right? Anything with Psychic just feels pretty bad for the most part. And you just have this 3-prizer that, especially if you're playing with the Dunsparce and not the Hariyama build, you really don't have a lot of attacking options. So kind of in the same boat as Garchomp here. I just think that some matchups are just a little bit too volatile to have like a super deep run. Outside of that, we're going to throw in, honestly, I'm gonna throw a Hydrapple as well. I think Hydrapple's gonna do better. I think it's gonna be more popular than Arboliva. These are not ordered, by the way. I'm just kind of throwing them into these tiers. I do think it will do better overall than Arboliva, but I don't really see it making top 32. I just think that it really kind of fell off a little bit with all the fire stuff kind of floating around right now to deal with Excadrill. It just kind of gets collateral with that, so that's a little bit unfortunate for the deck. I think that's all I'm gonna put there. I think everything else I'm gonna put above. So let's scroll a little bit. Let's go top 32 here. Top 32, this is where things get a little bit interesting. So Festival Lead is a deck that I'm very high on, right? But I've been playing it a lot more. I really, honestly, I really enjoy this deck. I just feel like it has some inconsistencies. I do think that it can deal with Dragapult, but the question is, how often can it deal with Dragapult? You know what I mean? Like, I think you can deal with the matchup, but if you hit 5 Dragapults, you're bound to lose to some of them at some point, right? So I don't think that Festival Lead's gonna win the event, right? But I do think that some people are gonna decide to play it and have some good runs with it. You hit the right matchups too, you hit Zoroark, that kind of stuff, then you are gonna be in a good spot. So I think Festival Lead makes top 32 for sure. I also think that Crustle makes top 32. A deck that's not super popular, but again, you hit the right matchups, you can have a deep run. We saw that at NAIC, we saw that at Indianapolis, we've seen that at a lot of tournaments. Crustle is just a good deck overall if you hit the right matchups. Hot take, I don't think Dragapult Blaziken is going to do too well at this event. I know a lot of people say it's one of the best versions of Dragapult because of Excadrill and that kind of stuff. I honestly think that Dragapult Blaziken is going to do the worst out of the 3. I'll get to my predictions on which one will do the best. But I just don't think that a lot of top players are playing the Blaziken version. Most top players are playing hammers or possibly Poltnor. I feel like Poltnor is a deck where I'll get to that in just a minute, but I think it's a very strong deck choice that a lot of people are underestimating right now. So I do think that Blaziken will perform the worst out of the 3 variants. Outside of that, we're gonna go ahead and also bold prediction. I'm gonna say Excadrill does not make top cut. It's a strong deck. I just think that the sauce has been leaked. Everybody's planning for Hero's Cape. You know, the tech cards are out there. Everyone knows this is a solid deck. You have to have answers to this deck, and I think that most people will. So I think a lot of people will play Excadrill. I just don't see it making top cut personally. And then I'm also going to go ahead and put Slowking in this category too. Another very strong single price deck. A deck that, if you're not prepared for it, can just board wipe you, obviously, if you don't have Shaman and that kind of stuff, or if you don't have a game plan around getting through Kyurem, you know. But I do think that Slowking, kind of the end runs, I would say, with top 32. I don't think that it makes top cuts. We're down to 6 decks here. I'm gonna put one more in top 32. I'm gonna throw Basic Box in here. This is just kind of a coin flip. I honestly think people are gonna bring Raging Bolt, and Raging Bolt has been kind of the talk of the town lately, so I honestly see Raging Bolt making a top cut. I think it's better positioned than like a Basic Box kind of deck, honestly. They kind of do the same thing in a way, right? The way that people are playing Raging Bolt now is less focused around Raging Bolt, and it's kind of more of a Basic Box kind of deck anyway, so it's kind of the same deck in a way, right? I'm just predicting that the one that makes top cut is going to have a Raging Bolt in their deck, right? So not too crazy of a prediction, but that's what we're going to say for that one. We're down to 4 decks here. I am going to throw in Dragapult with hammers. Makes top cut. I don't think it wins the event. Like I said, I don't think that Dragapult wins this tournament. I think that Dragapult will do the best overall at the tournament. I just don't think that it wins it. I just think that with a tournament like this, it's kind of similar to Worlds 2 years ago with Iron Thorns winning the whole thing when Regidrago was like, you know, the deck to beat. It's just so focused around Dragapult that you're either playing the deck or you're playing a deck that beats that deck. And some of those decks that beat that deck are going to kind of slip through the cracks and do very well at the tournament, I feel like. So I don't think that Dragapult wins it. I do think, honestly, I think that Dragapult Dusknoir is going to place higher than Dragapult with hammers. You know, it could be the difference by 1 place, right? But I do think that Dragapult Dusknoir, just the power level behind this deck, you know, yeah, it's technically worse than the mirrors, what everybody says, right? But I just think that it adds a layer to the deck that's not there without it, you know what I mean? So I just think that Dusknoir, we saw it at NAIC. I think that it just has the potential to do better. We're down to 2 decks here. Surprisingly, right? Alakazam, I'll talk about that. And Zoroark. Out of these 2 decks, I'm gonna say Alakazam makes a top cut. That's kind of the one like deck that kind of sneaks through the cracks a little bit. And I'm gonna say Zoroark wins the whole tournament. With Alakazam, out of the single prize decks, you know, as I've kind of been playing more, kind of looking into the meta more and stuff like that, I do think that Alakazam is pretty well positioned at this tournament. I think that it deals with stuff like Excadrill very well. I think that its unwinnable or very bad matchups aren't going to be super relevant, and I do think that if you can dodge the right matchups, you have the potential to go very far. There's multiple ways to build it to kind of deal with Dragapult. You can go with the Rapska build, you can go with the energy control style of build. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of play the deck right now, and I do think that it's a deck that a lot of top players do enjoy for the most part. You kind of look back at recent regionals, NAIC, that kind of stuff, and you will see a lot of the best players playing that deck specifically. I think that it has the potential to do very well if it hits the right matchups. So I would not be surprised to see Alakazam make a top cut. And Zoroark, I'm picking to win the event because it is kind of just the counter to Dragapult, I feel like. You know, obviously Dragapult can still win the matchup, but I do think that Zoroark just has so much that it can do. I think some of the best players in the world are playing this deck to this event because for the most part, with the best players in the world, you're either playing Dragapult or, again, you're playing a deck that beats Dragapults, and a lot of those players gravitate towards Zoroark. So this is a little bit dependent on dodging some of the volatile matchups, right? Dodging Festival Lead, you know, Hydra Apple, that kind of stuff. Again, you do have ways to win those matchups, but you do just need to kind of run into the right stuff. And if you can do that and you can get to those later stages of the tournament where you're mostly just hitting Dragapults, you're going to be in a really good spot. So I'm gonna pick Zoroark to win the whole tournament. Not too crazy of prediction, right? I think that Zoroark makes a lot of sense to win this tournament. I'd love to see it, honestly. And my other bold prediction, I would say, is Alakazam making top cuts. Let me know what you guys think. This is my thoughts right here, and I'll kind of have some recaps I'll do of Worlds. Maybe I'll do like a little co-stream too. We'll see. So stick around, subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see that. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. Enjoy watching Worlds, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.